He is a young prodigy with a bright future and a beautiful girlfriend, living the dream life. But all this changes when he gets kicked out of his party and is forced to start from scratch once again. So he gathers a group of outcasts and leads them to become the strongest triple-S class party in the world. The story begins with Nick's life flipping upside down as he gets kicked out of his party called the Masters of War by Argus, who he looked up to as a father figure. And as if that wasn't enough, his so-called girlfriend betrays and dumps him the very same day as well. The poor guy sits on a fountain in the rain, getting completely soaked and too broken to pay attention. He remembers the fight with Argus where he refuses to forgive some guy named Garasso, who ran off with all their hard-earned money just to impress some random girl. Argus flips it around and calls him selfish, and tells him that he is not cut out to be an adventurer. He reminds him how he took him in when he was just a kid and tells him to go find some other place where he actually belongs. While he's almost breaking down, a blue-haired girl appears holding an umbrella. She says he looks like a stray dog and casually hands him a ticket to her idol concert. Nick stares at her and says she doesn't look like any idol, then asks why she's even here. The girl says she's just starting out and that cheering people up is part of her job and passion. She gives him her umbrella and dashes off, asking him to show up at her concert. Nick doesn't want to go, but still ends up attending the show of that girl named Agate. And before he knows it, he turns into a hardcore idol otaku who blows all his savings on every bit of merchandise he can get. Wanting to earn more to fuel his honest otaku lifestyle, the guy shows up at the Adventurers Guild and starts scouting for rookies to build a fresh team. There Nick spots a guy and tries to approach him, but the moment he makes a move the guy plays dumb, and Nick ends up not talking to a single soul. After wasting all that time, he drags himself to a tavern and orders the cheapest thing on the menu just to avoid kicking the bucket. He looks around and sees everyone laughing and wonders if he'll ever get to laugh like that again. That's when 3 adventurers walk in and sit at his table. He thinks they might be a party, but since none of them even bother to speak, he figures out they're all loners just like him. One of those adventurers happens to be a fierce yet elegant-looking magic user, and from her crystal staff and flashy clothes Nick figures she must be some noble. After staring at her for a bit, his eyes shift to a drunken cleric who looks like he's already been kicked out of his church. Then he turns to the third one, which is a Dragonine girl. Nick tries giving her a friendly smile, but she just sits there with the same dead serious face, which doesn't even flinch. Just then their drinks arrive. Nick sinks into gloom and starts spiraling, thinking anyone he befriends would just end up betraying him anyway, and wonders if he'll ever be able to trust someone again. He downs the whole drink in one go and slams the mug on the table, only to hear the others do the exact same thing as they all shout in sync that they can't trust anyone either. They freeze and stare at each other in utter disbelief. The rich mage girl among them, named Tiana, begins sharing her story. One day after pulling off a lightning spell, which in this world means combining water and wind magic, she gets praised by her schoolmaster. She gets excited beyond words and rushes off to tell her fiancé Alex about her progress. There she finds the guy sitting with some random girl named Lynn. She sits beside him, too kind to even realize that her man is cheating on her, and happily shares how her teacher loved her lightning magic. But then she finally notices the girl next to him and asks who she is. Out of nowhere, her fiancé starts accusing her of bullying Lynn at school and then goes on a rant saying all she ever does is brag about her magic. He suddenly snaps, claiming he always felt looked down on because of her. And right then and there he breaks off the engagement, dumping her on the spot and marrying Lynn in front of her eyes. After Tiana's school ends, the poor heartbroken girl starts looking for a job, but everywhere she goes people turn her down, saying a noble lady like her is way too soft for real work. After getting rejected from every place she tries, Tiana ends up at a racetrack and somehow wins her first few bets, making a ton of cash right away. She gets hooked instantly, but before long she loses everything and ends up broke, barely able to pay her rent. She then tries finding a partner for adventuring, but anyone who sees her gets intimidated by the fierce and stone-cold look on her face. She even tries forcing a smile, but nothing works, and with zero luck left she ends up in this tavern sitting beside Nick. Nick then turns to the cleric guy, whose name is Zen, and asks about his story. Zen says he used to be a cleric in some small random city. There was this little girl named Muriel who used to help him gather herbs in exchange for a bit of money. Things were normal until one day the girl suddenly falls in love with him and even holds his hand, asking him to marry her. Zen gently refuses, saying he's a man of the cloth and can't get married. But the moment he refuses the underage marriage proposal, the girl bursts into tears and runs off crying, calling him a jerk as she disappears. A few days later, just as Zen is about to be promoted to High Cleric, the guards suddenly show up looking for him, with Muriel standing behind them, looking like something terrible has happened to her. Zen rushes over to her, but the guards stop him, restraining him. The girl accuses him of some serious crimes, and before he can explain himself, Zen is thrown into prison. He spends the next 3 months behind bars, and when he's finally released, he's banished with everyone calling him a pervert. After being cast out, Zen finds himself at an inn, where he stays with a lady. There he helps the lady relieve her back pain, and in return she advises him to visit the Labyrinth City and become an adventurer. Zen explains that this is how he ended up becoming a ladies' man and eventually found himself sitting in this tavern. Listening to both of their stories, Nick argues that he can't believe a word they say and asks if they feel the same. Zen, however, declares that he's going to defeat the Demon King. Nick turns to the Dragonian, whose name is Curran, and asks her to share her side as well. She simply responds, shouting that something important was stolen from her, and even worse, by the person who meant the most to her. Then, Nick reveals his backstory, explaining how a girl named Claudine dumped him and how he found out she had been using him all along. Suddenly, Nick wakes up to find himself upside down, his face pressed against the floor. It becomes clear that all of them have been sleeping in the same room. He quickly gets up, wakes them all up, and tells them to leave, only to realize that it's not his place. Tiana then calmly tells him that he should be the one leaving, as it's her place.
Before you go, tell me one thing. Is this really okay? Can we make enough money to survive? We each have something driving us, whether it's idols, food, gambling, or women. I don't know about you, but I care about things that give my life purpose. Here's what I'm proposing. Why don't we form our own party?
Later that morning, all 4 losers stroll into the guild, staring at a young receptionist as if she owes them something. An old guild lady shows up, scolding them for making the cute receptionist cry. She recognizes Nick from the Masters of War and starts going through their guild registration form. She points at Curran and mentions that she's the famous survivor girl who apparently came back alive after soloing a C-ranked dungeon. She adds that staying alive is the most important thing for adventurers and asks about their party's name. Nick proudly responds with Survivor and smiles, saying that no matter what, they'll make sure to come back alive. The others also approve of the name and shout out their new party name. After they're done with registration, Nick brings up 3 rules for their new party, which include never messing with each other's hobbies, always watching the money, and no matter what happens, they all have to come back alive. Instead of letting one person handle the cash, Nick suggests they all share responsibility for saving it. While explaining how they do it, they end up laughing and joking that Nick would be the worst at cracking the safe anyway. That's when Zem looks at him and asks why he's being so paranoid about the money part, upon which Nick shares a bit of his past to explain. Zem adds that Nick basically wants them to trust and doubt each other at the same time, which Curran finds kind of annoying. Still, they all talk about how much they wish they could trust someone again, but agree to stay skeptical for now just for their own sake. The party heads over to the Sticky Aqueducts, which turns out to be one of the 3 labyrinths they're allowed to explore while stuck at their starting rank G. Nick takes the lead and explains that once they manage to clear 2 dungeons, they would be promoted to F rank. He goes on to mention how these specific dungeons are basically like practice areas for newbies to get the hang of this whole adventuring gig. As Nick keeps going on with his lecture, he suddenly steps on something slimy, but lucky for him it doesn't end up being a trap. That's when he introduces the very first prey of the survivors' party, which just so happens to be a small, harmless-looking slime, munching on weeds. Everyone can't help but point out how adorable the little thing is. But Nick explains that even though this squishy cutie doesn't look threatening at all, it can actually turn into a giant menace that might start munching on cows if it manages to sneak into a farm. He then shows them how to deal with a slime and completely stuns everyone when he casually takes out its core, and that's all it takes. He wraps it up by telling them to make sure they collect all those crystals since they're meant to be exchanged for money later on. On their way to the top, Zem teases Tiana by asking if joining the party was just a gamble for her, which makes her protest as she complains to Nick that Zem is breaking the rule by interfering in her business. Nick smiles and quietly wonders if forming this party might have actually been the right decision. Zem then tries taking down a slime and admits it feels kind of wrong to take a creature's life. Everyone tries convincing him, and they all end up discussing why monsters even attack humans, though no one really comes to a clear answer. Nick reminds them to stay alert, and Tiana argues that the only change they've seen in slimes so far is that they've gotten faster. She then brags about how she once took out orcs and goblins, but right after that she trips, and Nick casually mentions that the slimes here shoot sticky fluids and are about as slippery as a banana peel. The mage gets embarrassed after messing up and quickly casts Icicle Dance in her rage, but she misses and accidentally fires it at Curran, who barely manages to block it with her sword. Tiana asks if she's alright and apologizes, but Curran turns cold and tells her to be careful, arguing it might be her next time, who ends up striking her by mistake. This incident puts a dent in their newly formed bond, and the two girls begin avoiding each other. A while later, they reach the top floor of the dungeon, where Nick once again reminds everyone to stay alert. That's when Zem spots a massive slime monster, and Nick tells them it's the dungeon's boss. Hearing that, the mage suddenly charges at the monster, claiming she can take it down on her own, but only ends up creating a complete mess. The party ends up washing their clothes by the riverside after the mess. Nick explains how giant slimes react to strong magic by splashing slime everywhere. He then tells Zem that his place is in the rear and he should rely on others to protect him. Nick removes his armor and reveals all his strengths and weaknesses, even admitting he knows nothing about magic. When the others ask why he's revealing so much, he tells them that if they understand each other better, it might help them build trust. He gives a small pep talk, trying to lift their spirits and keep them motivated. Hearing this, Zem finally opens up and shares his own strengths and weaknesses too. Tiana steps in front of Curran, bows an apology, and then reveals her strengths as well. This gesture seems to soften the Dragonoid's heart, and when Tiana sits down and starts acting cold, Curran lets out a sneeze that shoots a little ember toward her to start a fire and warm her up, though she jokingly claims she was trying to roast her alive but missed. That little moment finally seems to patch things up between the two. Next, our heroes make their way to the Goblin Forest, where Nick explains that these monsters are generally weak as long as no one ends up getting surrounded by a whole pack. Just then, a goblin jumps out and attacks Zem out of nowhere, but luckily he manages to deflect the attack. Nick steps in quickly and finishes the creature off. After that, the survivors go up against a whole horde of goblins, most of which Nick takes down on his own. That's when Tiana reveals her detection skill. With her skill, Tiana points out that one of the monsters is holding way too much magic to be just a regular goblin. Nick tells the team it's likely an ogre, which is an evolved form of a hobgoblin. The survivors briefly consider retreating, but then agree to move forward, reasoning about both the reward and the people who could be in danger if they leave the goblins and the ogre unchecked. They put together a plan that mainly relies on Nick and Curran, since magic doesn't work on evolved ogres. On their way, Curran and Tiana again bring up their trust issues nonsense, and end up agreeing to give each other another shot. All of a sudden, Curran senses a monster nearby and takes off after it, with the others quickly following behind. Zem casts a magic buff to boost their strength, while Tiana uses her spells to clear the path ahead. As the battle heats up, the talking ogre orders its minions to attack. Curran's legs start to tremble as she wants to trust Tiana again, and Tiana feels the same. The two finally place their trust in each other, and the mage casts her spell, which passes cleanly through Curran without harming her, clearing all the goblins in its path. Curran then charges ahead and, with her flaming sword, unleashes a fire dragon strike that brings the giant ogre down. After the fight, Nick begins collecting goblin horns to use as proof for payment and asks the others to help. While Curran places a horn in her bag, she finds a pendant that brings back some memory, leaving her quietly upset. Just then, Nick stumbles upon another ogre that he suspects is mid-evolution. He struggles a bit during the fight, and after pulling out the horn he loses his grip. The horn slips from his hand and falls right onto Curran's pendant, cracking it. We see a flashback where Curran lies limp on the floor of an eerie dungeon as she groans in pain until a nightmare-sized insect crawls over her face and jolts her awake. She pulls out her pendant and stares at it, trying to process that it wasn't just a dream. Back when she was with her last party, Curran walks through the market while a scheming merchant notices how much she likes a pendant and tries to scam her. As she walks away, he yells that Dragonian monsters like her should be careful since she damaged his goods with her dirty paws and threatens to call the knights on her if she doesn't pay up. Curran begins to worry, but a blonde man named Kalios appears and reminds her not to stray from him when she's shopping. The scummy merchant complains to Kalios about Curran's oopsie, so the man grabs the pendant from him and tells her to go ahead and scratch it again, leaving both of them speechless. He makes a bold bet that he'll pay double if she's actually guilty, and then has Curran peel it like a potato, exposing the merchant's filthy scam. Without making a big deal, he pulls out the real pendant Curran liked from his pocket, and, after getting his money back, hands it to her before making a smooth and confident exit. You see, Dragonians are a proud demi-human race whose destiny is to aid the hero and save the world, which is exactly why she spent every single day supporting Kalios' party. The next day, Curran is polishing her family's dragon gem when Kalios asks if she's ready to head out and tells her to leave her things behind since no one would dare steal from them. With that, Curran follows the man she's proud to serve with all her heart on a mission where, as usual, the others shower her with compliments, though it's Kalios' approval that brings her the most joy. Afterward, she offers to help with the grunt work, but Kalios tells her to trust her party and save her strength for when it truly counts. As they near the boss, the pot snake, he assures her he's got her back, and Curran charges in without hesitation. She slams her shoulder into the pot, which enrages the serpent and draws its full attention to her, prompting the rest of her party to jump in. She asks Kalios why it's glowing like that, but he keeps telling her to just trust them and hold its focus. She keeps calling out to him until the serpent coils around her and paralyzes her with its toxic breath, leaving her gasping for air and dropping like a sack of potatoes. The blonde guy and his party begin gathering the loot and casually thank their tough dragon girl for being the perfect bait for the famously lethal poison. The last thing she sees before blacking out is all of them walking away without a single glance back at her life. Later, she manages to crutch her way back, fueled by rage and determined to retrieve the dragon gem her father gave her, since it's crafted from the finest materials and has grown stronger alongside her throughout her life. Filled with conviction, she finally collapses just outside the inn, where the innkeeper tells her that Kalios and his party claimed she died and then vanished. She asks what happened to her belongings, and he says Kalios promised to return everything to her family. Curran gets a flashback of his warm face telling her to trust him, and almost throws away the filthy gift he gave her. But then the grief overwhelms her, and her knees give out completely. After that, she goes through a period of soul searching until one day, while starving, she sees an adventurer enter the tavern, and quite literally blows the door open. She overhears that he's Fifths, the famous solo eater. She quietly watches him enjoy the feast with the kind of joy a Mexican shows while eating tacos, and it somehow inspires her, so she orders the same meal. Later, she finds out the guy is a legendary solo hunter by day and gourmet food lover by night, so she decides to follow him around every day thinking he can't see her like John Cena. Fifths notices what she's doing and starts tossing hints her way on what to buy without making a big deal out of it. The next day, she returns the favor by saving his sword from a drunk guy at the tavern, so he gives her a simple thanks. But she thanks him from the bottom of her heart because he is the man who showed her what good food really tastes like and helped fill the massive hole left in her once innocent soul with food. Still, Curran quickly figures out that eating all this great food costs money, which she doesn't have any of, and that's the day she ends up meeting everyone at the guild. Back in the present, Nick searches all over for a pendant like Curran's and starts thinking it's even more terrifying that she didn't get mad at him. That's when he suddenly hears Agate call out from behind, pleasantly surprised that he doesn't look nearly as homeless as before. Later, he chats with her by a fountain, where Agate bluntly tells him it's pretty selfish to expect forgiveness just by replacing her pendant, but then adds that it's fine since her own selfishness is what led her to meet him. She tells Nick that maybe he should become Curran's gift himself, which gives him a very wrong idea. Sometime later, he finds her in the market happily munching on some piping hot squid balls, and she tries to get him to try the super spicy dumplings topped with wriggling worms which nearly send him to the afterlife, but Nick is glad to see Curran smiling again. After that, he asks Curran if her pendant really meant a lot to her, but she tells him not to worry about it too much and says she actually feels much happier now that it's gone. Later at the guild, the party's small gathering is interrupted by a catgirl who invites them to the back. There, an old lady gives Theme a quest to explore the labyrinth of bonds and recover a legendary artifact hidden deep within. The old lady explains that their mission is to locate the Kizuna blade and even promises to pay them each time they try even if they fail. Shocked that she's offering thousands for what sounds like a beginner-level job, Nick gets suspicious and insists she lay out every detail she has and put it all in writing so she doesn't try to pull something shady when it's time to pay up. With that settled, they charge through the dungeon like it's a casual adventure hunting for the sword, while Nick still can't shake the thought of Curran's pendant. Zem is amazed by the labyrinth's scientifically advanced design, but Nick tells them all to stop chatting and focus on spotting any hidden passages. Meanwhile, a mysterious voice watches their progress through surveillance cameras, eager to see whether this mismatched party can actually survive until the very end. Moving down the stairs, Nick leads the party as far as their map goes until they arrive at a dead end. But he quickly notices that the lamps are supposed to be red instead of green. So Nick rushes straight in, saying he likes to be thorough, and also maybe because he smells a hidden room full of money like Mr. Krabs. A door suddenly opens up, and they head inside. They find a big, dark room with tanks lined up, so Tiana asks if they seriously have to search the whole place. But Nick points out the obvious and heads straight toward the pedestal with the shining light. Tiana quickly stops them and scans for any traps using her magic sight, and the space shows up suspiciously clear. But the moment they get near the pedestal, the lights suddenly pop on and a voice calls out to the party and congratulates them on their brave journey. As the old man's voice coming from the sword keeps spouting nonsense, Nick ignores it and carefully examines the broken sword sitting there. Tiana thinks it might be a magic sword, but Nick calls it more trash than his waifu, which really sets off the talking sword. Nick tells the senile blade to quit going full Shakespeare on them and just tell them where the Sword of Bonds is. They're all shocked when the sword says it's exactly what they've been looking for. Pretending to go along with the old-timer, Nick says he won't toss him out of respect for his age, which makes the sword curious why no one's equipping it. Once it figures out that none of them actually use a short sword, it starts panicking about what they plan to do with its greatness, so Nick casually says they're obviously gonna sell it for some sweet cash. The sword immediately bursts into tears, crying that it doesn't want to be dumped again like the liars at the guild. When Tiana asks what the old man is even rambling about, it reveals that the guild that developed it, the prototype sword Kazuna, sealed it in the labyrinth afterwards so no one could ever get their hands on it, and it's been waiting for a worthy partner ever since. Nick tells it he understands, but he also understands money more. Kazuna begs him to use its power for something good instead of pulling an elan while a machine nearby starts rumbling ominously to life. Then they hear a massive boom, and Kazuna casually mentions that the Guardian is now officially on its way. Out of nowhere, a huge goop monster bursts in and forces them all to run for it. Tiana fires some sharp icicles straight into its ugly face while Curran charges in headfirst to slice it clean in half. But Kazuna realizes something's off, and before Nick can shout a warning, the creature reflects the icicles right back into Curran and drops her to the floor. Nick rushes in to cover the others by attacking the monster and yells at everyone to make a break for it while he keeps its attention. He quickly realizes that his attacks are doing absolutely nothing. As the sword explains, it's made of nanomachines and begs Nick to use its power, because that's his only real shot at surviving. Out of desperation, Nick's glowing blade of light gets larger, while the others struggle to get past the unbreakable door blocking their escape. As he glances at each of them, the sword tells Nick to imagine Curran in his mind and chant Union, but the light suddenly vanishes, so he yells at the hunk of junk for lying. He tries to lop off a piece of the monster anyway, only for the Guardian to smack him out of existence and yeet him into a hole in the ground like a golf ball. Seeing as their attacks don't work, Tiana gets the big brain idea to freeze it with ice magic and gives Curran a chance to save Nick. The moment she leaps into the hole though, it breaks out of the shell, leaving the two mages to buy time. Meanwhile, inside the rubble, Nick realizes he's fractured some ribs and considers giving up until he hears Curran call out to him. He tells her to escape with the other two while they can, which makes her really mad, and she says it's meaningless unless they all go home together. Nick gets up and apologizes for breaking her pendant, even though she told him not to sweat about it. Curran confesses that her party leader gave it to her, and even though she was furious at his backstabbing, she just couldn't get herself to trash it because she was hoping that he would someday come back in her life. But she's decided to move on and focus on the precious people with her now. She shocks him and says that she's glad that it's gone now and lifts him up with her precious smile. Seeing their bond strengthen, Kazuna asks Nick to activate it one more time. Back on the surface, Tiana gives up and tells Zem to stop wasting his spells on her and focus on saving Nick. As they say their last words, a blinding flash of light blasts out from behind the Guardian, which is shattered to smithereens by Nick and Curran's fusion. Kazuna explains that the Guardian's core is able to shift throughout its entire body and makes it almost impossible to land a proper hit. So Nick gathers a huge amount of magic and channels it into one massive sword strike that lights up the whole monster and completely destroys its core, though the two also collapse and their fusion comes undone. Meanwhile, at the guild, they show off the sword to the old lady and the cat girl who don't look that impressed. She calls it pretty underwhelming, probably because it's more of a vintage relic than a sword, and admits she'll pay them for the trouble they went through, which Nick approves of. But she then turns to the little white-haired midget staring at them from the back, who proudly introduces himself as Kazuna, the Sword of Bonds. Later, Kazuna laughs at how easily they conned the guild lady, which makes Nick question his whole thing about upholding justice and all. Kazuna cheekily says it's all to save a life, his life, though Zem is still confused about how it works and concerned that he chose a pretty blatant name for someone who wants to stay low-key. Later in Tiana's room, Nick empties out the sack of cash on the table, and everyone gets excited thinking about what to splurge their payday on. Kazuna gets a little confused about who he's supposed to tag along with, but Nick reminds him of the survivor's first rule that says messing with each other's fun time isn't allowed. He offers to take him to the idol concert if he can stay quiet in sword form the whole time. But after seeing him already looking bored out of his mind, Tiana offers to take him to see a race on the forbidden grounds on the condition that he doesn't complain about how she spends her money. The next day, Kazuna quietly admires the beauty of nature around him, giving off such a poetic vibe that the survivors sitting nearby can't help but notice. Tiana casually pulls out an igniter, catching Kazuna's eye as he immediately praises it with interest. She smiles and drifts into her memories, thinking about the time she spent with her professor. At the same time, teacher Nick digs out a few old relics to serve as their safe and then brings out some bronze coins, telling everyone to guard them well. Apparently, that tiny stash is all the money they've got left, so the party agrees to take on quests. The scene then flows into Tiana's past, back to the time when she graduated from magic school. She remembers the igniter her teacher gave her as a farewell gift. Along with it comes the guilt of how she ended up ruining the career of the very professor she admired the most. He got dragged into her scandal and lost his chance at the sage title he had always dreamed of. Yet even after everything, he still looked at her with a smile. As their conversation goes on, the professor suddenly bursts into laughter for no clear reason, and that laughter only grows more intense until it turns unsettling. It becomes clear that he's lost his mind and turned into a laughing maniac. Tiana looks back on his condition and feels a deep sense of pity for him, wishing things could return to how they used to be. As she rises from her bed, she wonders if she might just wake up in her mansion again. Meanwhile, Curran wakes up too, followed shortly by Zem. At the same time, Nick finds himself trapped in a dream about Claudine, but it quickly turns into a nightmare, snapping him awake as he pants heavily. He starts to wonder if it was telepathy, and if Kazuna has been sleep-talking inside his dream. The team gathers around a table where Kazuna suddenly yells that he has no past to return to, and that the time he's spending with the survivors is the best he's ever had. Later, they head off to an icy dungeon glistening with snow crystals, where they soon spot a Razatu ogre. While everyone is communicating quietly through telepathy, Kazuna ends up ruining the meaning of it as he charges straight at the monster, hoping to show off his skills. He actually does pretty well with the sword and even reveals a new move called Parallel, which lets him create a duplicate of himself. After they manage to take down the ogre, Nick walks up to him, saying he suddenly feels drained. Kazuna admits it was his doing, and he has used their stamina and magic to activate his skills. He adds that he can create up to 5 copies, and all of these abilities were copies from a swordsman who used him once. Tiana calls it straight up cheating, but Nick says he's just glad Kazuna's on their side. Kazuna then brings up using Union again, though Nick shoots that down, saying anything that leaves them collapsing right after a battle is too risky to use often. Meanwhile, all Curran can think of as usual is food. As they reach a food court, Nick finds himself thinking back to the dream he had last night. While they're sitting at the table, Curran starts tossing out some completely useless food advice. And when Nick teases her about how she's the one who eats through their budget, she just throws the survivor's first rule right back at him and shuts him up. Just as Nick starts thinking about her again, he spots his old flame Claudine sitting nearby, clearly working her charm on another poor kid who's already fallen for her act. She's crying about how she has to go back to her mother who doesn't have much time left, using a sympathy card to wrap the kid around her finger. Right then, Nick shows up beside them and starts mocking her with sharp little jabs that slowly expose her drama. The new victim turns to Claudine and asks who Nick is, and Claudine looks ready to explode. Nick then hands the boy his gift back, saying it's not even her birthday, blowing the whole thing wide open. The confused kid turns to Nick and asks if everything Claudine told him was just a lie. Later, while Nick is busy laying out a plan for a new cave labyrinth they're supposed to scout, Claudine suddenly shows up and dumps a glass of juice straight on his head as revenge. But Nick stays completely calm and simply asks if her mother is doing well. She even brings along that big cat guy named Leon from earlier, who tries to intimidate Nick by warning him to treat Claudine better. Nick shoots back with a smirk, asking if the guy is also part of the Iron Kitties, which instantly makes Claudine snap, yelling that the name was Iron Tigers and not Kitties. As the argument heats up, Leon tells Nick to step outside so they can settle this with a fight. Once they reach a quiet place where no one can see them, Nick takes an offensive stance, ready to throw hands, but out of nowhere, the big kitty suddenly apologizes. He thanks Nick for finally putting an end to Claudine's nonsense and even says Nick can have her now. Leon admits he's used her enough and that she's got tons of enemies chasing her down just like Nick. Then he casually asks if Nick has also been scamming the new recruits in his party. Nick looks furious for a second but suddenly bursts out laughing like a complete maniac. And just when Leon starts thinking they're on the same wavelength, Nick punches him right on the chin and sends him crashing to the ground. The fight kicks off but ends almost immediately since the big kitty doesn't stand a chance against our teacher Nick. Nick restrains him and explains that while he also wants money, scamming his friends for it would make the money worthless. Right then, a new guy sneaks up from behind and lands a surprise wind attack on Nick, which catches him off guard. But before this guy can even finish bragging, our Dragonian girl drops in with a perfect ambush of her own. Just then, the guild lady, Vilma, arrives, and the big kitty suddenly proposes a math-based bare-knuckle battle to settle things once and for all, appointing the receptionist as their referee. The next day, the guild lady explains there are 10 rounds in the maths brawl, where the problems keep getting harder each time, and each round only ends when one side finishes their calculations, with the side scoring higher getting a free hit. Just as Curran starts worrying about how big a responsibility it sounds, everyone gets shocked when she ends up winning the draw, and she starts having a seizure just from thinking about maths, while Claudine's taunt makes her want to jump off a cliff. After that, she takes a mock test and Zem congratulates her, saying she's got decent potential once she puts in some study. He hands her the sheet, which makes her really sad, but he cheers her up by saying that after her training she'll be Einstein in no time. On their way out, Kazuna offers to fight for them, but Zem thinks he's way too strong and insists it's a problem they need to handle on their own. So they spend the next few weeks carefully planning their strategy while Zem gathers some intel from his ladies. The night before the competition, Nick tells everyone there's no doubt Claudine's team will try something sneaky and reveals they've pulled this kind of trick before. Zem adds that his night ladies told him the Tigers party is way smarter than it seems and has some method of sharing info no one can detect. Tiana guesses they're using thought gems, which are basically the Temu version of Kazuna's telepathy. Nick tells Curran she just needs to keep solving her problems until Tiana gives the signal. Meanwhile, it is revealed that Claudine barely avoided being sold into slavery by her own parents, and after that, she started using her budget Taylor Swift looks to scam simps out of their money, feeling pretty satisfied with her hustle life until Nick came along. Just thinking about him snaps her out of the nightmare, and she swears she's going to make him pay for turning her life upside down. On the day of the competition, Catgirl hands out the problem sheets to both girls and Curran feels relieved that they're not hard, but Claudine taunts her saying even kids could breeze through the first one. Meanwhile, Nick fights Tiger Man Leon and notices he's not fighting back, which makes him think the guy might just be buying time. Seeing Nick struggle, Curran starts to worry before locking in and finishing first. As she flashes a confident grin at Claudine, the Catgirl announces the score, revealing Claudine left her in the dust with a near-perfect score, which Zem expected since Curran had rushed to finish. Nick still jokes that little Catman's fluffy paws can't hurt his rock-hard abs, but his face quickly drops when Leon lands a dirty hit to his solar plexus. Still, it's not enough to knock him out, and Nick already figured they'd try to abuse the math part since Curran's at a clear disadvantage and aimed to win by just penalty hits. With that, Claudine takes another round, making Curran wince at Nick getting beaten because of her mistake, but the Chad tells her she's not the one taking the hits. She cries out anyway, saying he's getting hurt only because of her tiny bird brain. Hearing that, Nick laughs and says he was ready to take dozens of hits back when she barely scored 20 before training. But now that he's seen her progress, he's got full hope in her. He calls her the smartest girl he knows, which makes Curran so happy she tells Claudine to take her trash talk straight to the garbage where she belongs. She locks into the next round, fully focused and completely unfazed by Claudine's yapping. Meanwhile, Tiana keeps a close eye on Claudine, waiting to catch her the moment the problems start getting tougher and Curran begins falling behind, while Claudine breezes through the equations by cheating like a smug little gremlin. Seeing Nick at his limit, Tiana scans the area with her magic sight, but spots no signs of foul play. After Nick takes another penalty hit, Tiana gets everyone's attention with a sharp whack of her pipe and tells the guild lady she doesn't have time to sit through a slow math match, suggesting they drop all the problems at once. The guild lady warns that doing so means whoever finishes first is basically guaranteed to win with 7 penalty punches in a row, but Nick just grins and tells her to bring it on. With that, the cat girl hands all the sheets to Curran and the snake girl, and Tiana keeps her eyes sharp as she waits for Claudine to finally show her cheating hand. Seeing Curran go full throttle, Claudine gets cocky and tells her guy hidden somewhere to bring out the calculator. As the two girls fiercely wield their pencils, Tiana notices a magic signature in the distance and moves out with the party. Nick catches on and taunts Leon about his missing team member, which makes the Tiger Man worry they've figured out their big brain plan. In a panic, he yells at Claudine to stop, but that only makes her angrier and raises the guild lady's suspicion. Meanwhile, Claudine struggles to coordinate with a nerd in the tower, so Kazuna finally drops in with the rest of the party greeting him from behind. Meanwhile, Claudine is at her wit's end and gets so frustrated she yells at the nerd that he's taking too darn long. Just then, Tiana shows up with the robed idiot, waving their thought gem for everyone to see. Guild lady asks the blonde girl if she's also got one, much to Tiana's anger. With that, the guards escort the oversized pussycat to jail, but Claudine starts rambling that she's struggled her whole life and no one has the right to blame her. Curran doesn't buy it, and Tiana states that everyone gets a chance to change. Later that night, they all head to the tavern to celebrate Curran's MVP math skills. While being thrown behind bars, the Tiger Man slips back into his memories, thinking about an adventure party known as the Silver Tigers. The one leading that group was Bishot, someone who stood out with his sharp intelligence among the otherwise dim-witted Tigerians, and that guy happened to be his very own brother. Thanks to Bishot's brains, they managed to conquer the infamous Mechasteel Moonhell Labyrinth and swipe the treasure hidden deep within it. But his reckless nature ends up costing him his life early on, leaving Leon with a heavy distrust towards humans. Right then, a guard steps into the Tigerian's cell, draws his sword without warning, and holds it toward him while demanding to know the location of the treasures his party once sold, since not even the black market left a single trace of them. When the guard asks if he still has the treasures on him, Leon flashes a sly smirk and throws back a question of his own, wondering how he figured it out. Turns out, there's one item Leon never dared to sell, simply because it's way too dangerous to handle. With no other option left, he finally calls it forth, revealing the Sword of Evolution, a weapon that strangely looks a whole lot like Kazuna. Meanwhile, our survivors are out enjoying the huge pile of money they recently earned. Being the undisputed queen of gamblers, Tiana sits confidently at a casino table, fully immersed in the game while keeping a sharp eye on everyone around her. At the same time, Nick shows up to tag along with Kazuna, who originally came just to grab some ice cream, but ends up completely ticked off when it gets sold right before his turn. Seeing that they're already here, Nick casually asks if Kazuna wants to try gambling too, but the sword replies that he can't due to the ethics protocols hardwired into him. That's when Kazuna notices a man holding a set of cards and learns that these particular cards are laced with anti-magic to keep people from cheating. Just then, a big bad lion is seen approaching the casino trying to look for its prey. Back inside, Tiana calmly soaks in the sweet scent of her incoming victory, fully aware that no one in this room stands a chance against her. Just as she wins and gets ready to leave, the big bad lion from earlier storms into the casino, causing a whole mess and throwing everything into chaos. The guy starts looking around, and it quickly becomes obvious that he's here for our hero Nick and is holding on to some serious grudge. As his thoughts focus on Nick, it's revealed that this monster is actually Leon, and his beastly transformation has something to do with the sword he summoned earlier. He remembers just how much he used to envy our guy. As the story rewinds to the cell, the sword slices through Leon's restraints and asks if he's finally ready to unleash his destructive powers, wanting to know who he plans to annihilate first. The sight of the blade and the deadly pressure it gives off is so intense that the guard nearby ends up leaking into his pants. Leon calmly tells the Sword of Destruction who his target is, and when he questions whether the weapon's still strong enough, it proudly snaps back that it's from 100 years ago, and that tech has only gotten worse since then. With no hesitation, Leon grabs the sword, yells out evolution, and transforms into this terrifying beast. As Leon keeps tearing the place apart, Tiana turns to Agate and asks who let the oversized pussycat into the casino. She starts to get nervous, realizing she handed over her weapon when she came in, and right then the big cat steps in front of her demanding to know where Nick is. Tiana casually asks who he even is, but freezes the moment she realizes it's actually Leon. Surprised at how massive he's gotten, she still refuses to give up Nick's location. Leon doesn't take it lightly and threatens to end her right there, warning her that his sense of smell has evolved so much he can now sniff out lies. The lady calmly gets the oversized cat talking, purposely making him drop his guard before suddenly blasting him with her lightning flash and roasting him. She makes a run for it, but the big pussy bounces back instantly and hurls a whole casino table in front of her, blocking her path. Tiana's eyes widen as she struggles to understand how the beast healed so fast. Thinking quickly, she turns to Agate's manager and tells him to protect her, pointing out that she's basically his ticket to a fortune. As the guy rushes to escort her out, Tiana turns back around and tells the raging beast how important it is to rely on your friends and actually care about others. Leon sniffs the air using his ultra-evolved senses to catch even the tiniest lies, but finds nothing wrong in her words. The idea doesn't sit right with him, and he scoffs, calling it pathetic while wondering if this is what hope actually smells like. Just as Tiana points out that holding her hostage won't help lure out Nick, the big cat leaps at her with a crushing attack only to get stopped by Nick himself, who refuses to let Tiana die on his watch. That's when the Sword of Evolution speaks up again, warning that another of its kind is nearby before realizing that it's actually its long-lost rival, the Sword of Bonds. Fired up by the chance to settle old scores, the Dark Sword unleashes its full potential on Leon, transforming him into an even bigger and more monstrous version. The Sword of Bonds immediately sees how dangerous this is, recognizing that the dark weapon is now devouring not just Leon's body, but also his mind. As the clash begins, Tiana calls out to our boy to use Union, and he swiftly takes the chance, managing to fuse with her on the spot. From that fusion emerges a stunningly majestic, almost girl figure with long hair. Their union form blasts out a freezing move called Ice Age, following it up with another strike, but Leon powers right through like it's nothing. Right then, a crack forms in his rage and Leon starts questioning why he's doing any of this, realizing there's no real goal as he just wanted to mess around with Nick for a bit. But the Berserk Sword has pushed him too far, and now innocent people are getting hurt. The sword senses Leon beginning to calm down and desperately tries to push him back into madness, telling him to enjoy watching others suffer. But Leon doesn't fall for it this time. Even so, the Sword of Evolution coldly tells him it's already too late to turn back. Leon fights against the sword's control, trying to break free while it uses his worst memories against him. He shouts for help, and suddenly, a holy light appears, followed by Nick and Tiana's majestic union form, who launches anti-magic cards to break the sword's hold. With their help, Leon gets saved and again finds himself back in his cell, reflecting on his actions. Nick shows up for a visit and Leon greets him with a smirk, joking if he's just here to check out a tiger in a zoo. Nick assures him that luckily no one at the casino died, though the place itself is now a complete wreck, which visibly puts Leon at ease before the guy leaves after a short but much needed chat. The following day, Nick is out for a run when he hears Agate's voice motivating him in his head. He thinks his simp levels are getting out of hand, but when she mentions he has to buy merchandise to reach the next level, he is disappointed by how greedy she is. The two take a break in the park, and Agate asks him if he's found a purpose in life now, confessing she'd feel guilty if he became a waste of oxygen like some of her fans. This leaves Nick speechless, and he thanks her for saving him from becoming a petty criminal, saying she really became his idol that day. Agate goes deep in thought and suddenly gets sentimental, which Nick figures is the real reason she went on hiatus. Back at her boyfriend Donnie's pub, we see Agate, whose real name is Belle Hadgens, before she became an idol. She used to sing just for fun until one day, a producer showed up and recruited her for his company. Her boyfriend tries to chase off the bald producer, but when he hears how much money it could make, he throws up his hands and becomes her manager. That night, she watches an idol shine like a diamond on stage, and it lights a fire in her heart to sing and have fans accept her. Before she knows it, she's in an idol trio named after Jules, and while she enjoys every moment of it, her life with Donnie starts to crumble as he turns into a deadbeat gold digger, who only sees her as a walking bag of cash and refuses to admit he has a gambling problem. A few days later, Agate sits alone, thinking about how far Donnie's fallen from the dream he once shared with her. He used to talk about opening a bar that would make Gordon Ramsay proud. That's the day she sees Claudine roast the life out of Nick's non-existent dignity, leaving him so crushed he walks into the rain and sits there like a lifeless husk. So she decides to talk to him out of pity. A couple days later, Agate finds herself in a casino where Donnie burns his winnings. There, she spots an angel who's more of a gambling demon than anything, effortlessly putting everyone at the table to shame. A short while later, the angel transforms into a magical being and slays a monster right in front of her eyes, leaving Agate completely awestruck. Later, her producer makes Donnie sign a contract to settle all his debts, with the condition that he has to forget Agate and never contact her again. Agate feels a heavy sadness and tells him she really likes him, but she's doing this because he stopped looking at her. She adds that he's bad for her now, and she's tired of trying to fix him. Donnie cracks up, then says he's going to hit it big and show her. With a self-satisfied grin, he walks out of her life for good. After that, Nick shows up at Agate's comeback concert, where she opens with a smile as cheerful as always and tells her fans about meeting an angel during the recent casino incident. Hearing her mention the aura farming knight who saved her life and left without even giving her name, Nick feels an uncanny familiarity. She shocks him further by revealing that her comeback song is about her new hero, the legendary paladin, to share the hope she gained when she was down in the dumps with her fans. After the concert, Agate pulls the telepathy trick with Nick at the park again and keeps clowning on him for being hopelessly delusional until he tells her to stop playing and just spill whatever is actually stressing her out. She hesitates a little, but then lets it all pour out, and the two end up having a surprisingly wholesome heart-to-heart. The next day, Kazuna brings Zem a magazine that talks about a strange phantom known as the Stepping Man, a guy who apparently spends his nights kidnapping kids. Kazuna gets super excited explaining how this guy can jump around in mid-air and how nobody has been able to catch him so far. Curran argues that they should probably stop him if he's really evil, but Nick jumps in saying the whole thing sounds fake, though Kazuna immediately starts arguing like a stubborn kid, insisting that the guy is totally real. That's when a green-haired lady named Olivia Taylor suddenly appears, thrilled to hear the name Stepping Man, and proudly reveals that she's the one who wrote the magazine article. Olivia explains that whenever something suspicious is going on in the city of Labyrinths, she always makes it her mission to dig deep and figure out who's behind it. Later that night, Zem, while being drunk, stumbles toward a narrow alley following a little girl, and right before his eyes, the child suddenly gets snatched and vanishes from sight. While walking with Nick, Kazuna suddenly comes to a halt and tells him that Zem is in danger, prompting the two to rush off in search of their friend and finding Zem just in time as he stops the nearly invisible Stepping Man from kidnapping the girl. It turns out the Stepping Man is very much real, and Kazuna immediately engages him in a fight, though the culprit ends up escaping from the scene. Once they're out of trouble, Zem brings the little girl to a woman named Red who starts tending to her. Nick begins questioning the girl about who the man was and what she was doing out there. The girl responds that it really was the Stepping Man and explains that her mother had been tracking him down before ending up in the hospital. The group then finds out that her name is Riene, and Zem adds that they believe what she says. Suddenly, Riene asks Zem to take her on as his student, clearly impressed by his bravery. But Zem responds that she's at least 15 years too young to be his pupil. She then eagerly asks what she should do to train until then, and Zem simply tells her to rest and never try anything dangerous like chasing after the Stepping Man again. Rihanna quickly agrees and happily calls Zem her master. The next day, our survivors make their way to the Bounty Guild, hoping to dig up some information on the Stepping Man. But the cat lady at the counter refuses to hand out details on valuable bounties that easily and quickly recognizes Nick as a former member of the Masters of War. She hands them a simple bounty instead, assigning them a guy named Hale Hardy and promising a reward of a few 100,000 dinas if they manage to catch him. As the receptionist calls out the name of their party, the other bounty hunters in the room start paying attention and immediately recognize them, with one of them mocking them for being clueless about how bounty hunting really works. Not one to let that slide, our gambling queen Channa throws down a bet with the guy, offering him a turn. After getting their mission, the survivors head to the slums known as Garbage Collection. Hoping to track down their target there, the party approaches the gatekeeper and tries to squeeze some information out of him. Instead of being helpful, the guy rambles on about some guy named Greg, whose dog recently gave birth to 10 male pups. And just when the survivors are about to give up and walk away, realizing they're not getting anything useful from him, he suddenly warns them never to cross paths with someone named Nalgava. On their way through the area, a group of thugs attempt to rob them. But the party takes them down with ease, and Nick gets the leader to spill that the man they're hunting can likely be found in the bedrooms. The party moves forward, passing through the slums and seeing firsthand how miserable the conditions are for the people living there. Kazuna quickly recognizes the area, and in no time, they find their target. Hale tries to make a run for it, but they swiftly tie him up with ropes. Just then, a bald man appears, revealing himself to be Nalgava, who claims Hale as his patient. He demands to know why they're taking his patient and gets angry. Nick calmly explains the situation, and after a brief back and forth, Nalgava reluctantly lets them go, arguing that a sinner like him can't be forgiven for his sins. It's revealed that Nalgava, like Zem, is also an ex-priest and is qualified enough to treat highly contagious diseases. But for some unknown reasons, he's now stuck in the slums. Kazuna tries to ask Nalgava about the stepping man, but they don't get any useful information from him. The survivors head back to the guild to claim their bounty, and Tiana takes the opportunity to boast about easily winning the bet. She collects her winnings and heads straight to the counter, treating everyone in the guild to free drinks, winning their hearts. The next day, the survivors approach the receptionist, hoping to get some information on the stepping man. She tells them she doesn't know much, but mentions a suspicious person who's been seen talking to kids, pointing towards Olivia, who's sitting with Riane. The survivors grow wary of Olivia and decide to investigate further, wondering if she might be the culprit. Nick orders his team to block off all the exits, and just as he's about to question Olivia, asking where she was 2 nights ago and if she's been kidnapping kids, the lady jumps high into the air, creating a hole in the roof and making her escape. Later at the brothel, they talk things over until a surprise guest shows up. Zem immediately clocks the mature blonde lady as Ada, and Nick confesses he's a fanboy for the legendary party grand chef's famous swashbuckler. After quick intros, the woman apologizes for her daughter Riane's wild behavior, which Zem fully agrees with. That sends the kid into rage mode, thinking her master's a total coward. But he says he can't be her master since little girls horrify him, ever since one lied and got him jailed for half his life. He adds that now his body literally freezes up around young girls like her, and he forgets how to breathe. She asks how he protected her from the kidnappers, and Zem answers that any adult would save a kid in danger, but maybe it means he's actually healing. Rihanna then drops the whole 15-year-old thing, and Ada refuses to marry her girl off to some sketchy priest, but Rihanna hard passes on marriage anyway, saying she's got high standards for a boyfriend and only wants Zem as her master. With that, things get serious and Ada advises the group to quit their pointless mission, now that they've seen firsthand Stepping Man is way out of their league. Nick steps up and tells her she has no right to stop them, so she fires back that he's a dumb kid with no muscle to speak of. Nick accepts that and says he still can't sit back when children are being kidnapped left and right. Ada makes it clear she's tapping out to save her own skin and make sure Rihanna doesn't end up an orphan, so Nick asks if she'll train his party instead. Watching the party leader bow without hesitation wins her over, and she kicks off their training by serving soup that brings out their magic potential, since using magic right is the only shot they've got at standing a chance against Stepping Man. She then trains Nick on the same enhancement magic Stepping Man uses, called Light Body, and tells him to skip across a tightrope 10 times. He shocks everyone by breezing through it until the 9th jump sends him crashing knee first into the concrete. Later that night, Stepping Man gets his creepy hands on another young maiden, but Kazuna and Curran swoop in for the save. Zem is thrown off that he always strikes at the exact same time, and when Nick asks if he's Olivia, the guy's face glitches for a split second before he bolts onto a roof. Kazuna points out that no regular human could use this many spells, and he's probably using a magic item. So Nick swings by an old friend and bribes the artifact specialist with food for information. Leon tells him about an artifact called the Illusion King's Jewel that hides the user's presence and explains its spell can be broken just by naming the user, something Nick already tried. But Leon says it only works if he's completely sure who it is. The next day, Nick is practically doing backflips during training, which reminds him of when he first started out as a kid. His old instructor had him build up physical skills before even touching magic, and told him his midget build didn't have to be his weakness. Back in the present, Nick pulls off some full Spider-Man moves and lands with peak aura, though he still can't fully control the light body spell. Zem then brings some good news that he's got a solid lead on Stepping Man, and with that, they head to the slums where there's nothing new other than a recently arrived child's body. As they move in to check the body, Kazuna warns everyone through telepathy that they're being tailed, and a robed figure suddenly ambushes Nick. He uses light body to dodge her monstrous punches, but that spell only confirms Olivia's suspicion that he's stepping man. She starts wrecking the rails like they're made of tissue paper and responds to Kazuna's signature technique with her own shadow clones. Nick takes the chance and shouts at Olivia to just admit it. So the woman casually pulls down her hood and owns up. Olivia says she's honestly disappointed that he turned out to be stepping man and explains that while she proudly cosplays as him, she's not the actual kidnapper and they just happen to share the rooftop jumping hobby. Putting that aside, they open the coffin in the mortuary together and don't notice anything strange about the body at first. But Olivia tells them to look closer, and sure enough the girl looks way too perfect, meaning their senses are being tricked by magic. Kazuna suggests they examine the body more carefully, and that's when they find a shard of the Illusion King's jewel. As soon as Olivia crushes it, the girl's real features come into view. Back at the brothel, they identify her as the daughter of a runaway blacksmith's kid. Zem notes that since the body was dumped with the garbage, there's a good chance the culprit's still lurking in that area. As he promises they'll return the girl to her parents and get justice, Zem quietly admits he has a pretty solid idea who Stepping Man really is. The following night, Nick catches Stepping Man on a rooftop again. He mocks the faceless figure for missing his sneak attack, and the guy surprises him by complimenting his polished martial arts. Nick shifts to a serious tone and demands to know why he keeps using the same tactics when he knows they've been exposed, but Stepping Man answers by throwing out his chains. Nick charges in for close combat and says he's figured out the reason behind the kidnappings, especially near the garbage collection sites. Stepping Man doesn't buy it, but Nick stops his kick just inches from his face and pulls back. He points out how sus an overqualified doctor running research in the slums is and calls out Nelgava's name without hesitation. As the clouds part and moonlight hits his face, Nelgava's veil fades while he congratulates Nick for discovering the truth. Nick says it all became obvious once they found out the kids had yellow demon sickness, and there's no way it would spread from the slums to city kids without some filthy bastard pulling strings, then grins that his doctor clued him in. He adds that Zem also figured out the plan to kidnap kids for use as research subjects in a crazed hunt for a cure. Since Nelgava clearly isn't in the mood to talk, Nick charges in and drops a brutal combo that the old man reads like a book until Nick lands a kick so hard it breaks through the roof and sends them both crashing into the storehouse below. He smugly thanks the doctor for always taking the same path, and the rest of the team arrives ready to jump his wrinkled self. Zem uses the moment to ask why he stopped this low, and Nelgava says it's all for his daughter. But Zem already knows yellow demon sickness is a venereal disease, and says the girl caught it by accident from a patient sample while trying to follow in her father's footsteps, though no one paused before spreading nasty rumors. The old doctor breaks into a gut-wrenching rant about why his daughter had to die and collapses as he claims he's now willing to sacrifice as many children as it takes to find the cure she needed. Zem feels let down by the senior he once admired and asks how he manages to live with himself. The doctor says he's being naive and should understand that everyone carries a dark side, and as a father, his duty outweighs what others think of his twisted methods. Zem says he's heard enough and brings the man crashing back to reality. He asks if the doctor even remembers the little girl whose life he stole, then gets furious that the bald old man already forgot one of his many victims. He tells him about the look on her parents' faces when he returned her lifeless body and how the entire neighborhood grieved with tears. Zem reminds him that all those kids aren't just nameless strays and are loved by someone, just like his daughter was. Nelgava apologizes and admits he met a priest by chance and clung to him like a desperate leech until he got accepted as a priest. Still, Zem reminds him that he's been saving lives through his clinic and says that to the people. He's always been a real doctor. Hearing the guy still spit out toxic positivity makes the bald man laugh until he coughs up blood and says stopping him won't solve everything. But Zem stands firm and says he'll take on whatever comes, one step at a time. Right then, Kazuna senses something dangerous closing in fast, and the second he warns the group, a beam of energy blasts straight through the old doctor's chest. A white masked knight appears and tells the doctor it's time for his eternal nap. He says he came to rescue him, but the orders changed, then brags about smashing their precious Illusion King's stone worth billions. Nelgava just replies that his fate was sealed the moment he chose to get caught. When Zem tries to reach him, the masked knight throws him aside through telepathy and tells him not to waste pity on his enemies, mocking him to save himself instead. Curran and Tiana rush in to help, but the white mask moves faster than their eyes can keep up and sends them flying like they just got kicked straight into Narnia. While Zem heals the doctor, he tells him he always makes the same mistake by forgetting to put his comrades first, then calls his so-called kindness nothing more than a selfish need to save the helpless, and makes it clear that mindset will get both him and his friends destroyed. Right after, Nick says they need to use Union but freezes when he sees everyone barely holding on. Olivia quickly snaps him out of it by offering to buy time for him to choose, and as Zem gives the go-ahead, the lady goes full Jackie Chan and kicks White Mask into another dimension. She reveals who he is and proudly introduces herself as many things. But today, she's the Dombi mommy here to put him in his place. White Mask says knowing too much ruined the cat and charges with his sword, which she casually catches like it's a hot potato before hammering him with back-to-back kicks that crack his mask and force him to fall back. As the White Mask starts to heal, Olivia figures she can't break through the ancient gear, but Nick and Zem combine powers, and for the first time White Mask actually panics. Realizing he's found a worthy opponent, he steps it up and uses gravity magic to pin Olivia to the ground. After that, he nearly crushes our protagonist with a sword that really weighs more than a mountain, so Nick switches to a speed-based approach which White Mask first mistakes for a basic stepping spell, though he quickly figures out Nick is actually jumping through mid-air. Meanwhile, just when Olivia thinks it's time to head to heaven, she notices the pressure has eased and breaks free from the gravity spell. As White Mask gets distracted by Nick's lightning-fast mid-air movement, Olivia charges like Sonic the Hedgehog and boots a massive boulder his way that he narrowly dodges. White Mask then locks onto Nick and catches him, convinced he's won, but Kazuna suddenly comes flying in like a shuriken and nails him right in the face. Still, he yanks it out like it's nothing and says he's calling it a day before making a dramatic nuclear exit. Everyone escapes the rubble in one piece, but Zem immediately hurries to the bald doctor's side. The old man reveals he has the yellow sickness himself and won't last long, so as the building rumbles, Kazuna warns everyone they have no time. With that, they rush out of the collapsing building. The next day, Zem mourns the loss of a great man from this world. Nick offers some comfort, and Curran tells him he did everything he could. After wiping away a few manly tears, they regroup as Kazuna says the big case is finally closed, though Olivia reminds him that White Mask was just one part of a larger organization. There's always a top dog pulling strings from the shadows, and with their stockpile of ancient weapons, they could cause all kinds of chaos. Hearing that, Nick turns to the green-haired monster of a lady and asks who she really is in all this. She playfully calls him naughty for even asking before she casually reveals that like the Sword of Bonds, she carries the title of Sword of War. Since that day, the survivors spend most of their days in bed, realizing just how weak they really are after facing White Mask. While staring at a broken old sword, Nick remembers being in a carriage with his parents on the way to where his uncle Argus lives, when he hears his father go silent and his mother shoves him like a toy into a hidden compartment and tells him they love him very much. He hears swords clashing and someone yelling that Argus betrayed them, and he barely escapes the fatty who takes the cash and even checks the compartment. But Nick's luck turns worse when he runs into a huge man with a knife right as the fatty catches up. Just as he shuts his eyes, the big guy finishes off the walking Big Mac and mutters an apology. Nick later learns the man is actually his uncle Argus and becomes his student, driven by the regret of being useless and failing to protect his parents. Wondering what he could have done to change how things turned out, Nick lies in bed as his thoughts grow darker until he drifts off. He wakes to the sound of rain pouring and Agate singing nearby. Letting the umbrella she lent him slip and land on her head, they end up sharing a quiet, sweet moment, talking through the night. Meanwhile, Zem takes over Dr. Nelgava's clinic and finds real joy in helping the people from the slums who need it most. He realizes it's impossible for him to hate the doctor and finally accepts his selfish desire as he sees the smile on a patient's face. Back at Tiana's place, she spends sleepless nights reflecting on her life. Even though she keeps winning bets and is practically swimming in wealth, it all feels empty until she tastes a delicious soup that reminds her of a dear friend who would have loved it. The next day, Curran checks in with everyone and asks if they're doing well. When Kazuna notices what Zem's been up to in his free time, he brings up the rule they made to not pry into each other's lives. A rule that now makes things feel colder since after the job ended and growing them apart. That night, Kazuna visits Zem at the clinic, and when Zem tells him to leave, the boy says he doesn't need to meddle in his life, just to watch his back in a sketchy area. Curran stops by the next morning too, and Kazuna tries to break the ice, but when she finds out they had breakfast without her, she immediately goes off. As she walks through the streets, annoyed that she still can't get Kalios out of her head, she spots a little girl falling for the same scam she once did and gives the sleazy merchant an earful. Right after that, Nick and the others bump into her and invite her to the festival. She agrees the second Tiana says there's good food. Being with her friends helps clear away the frustration from her last team, and she promises to fulfill her duty as a proud Dragonian who stands with humanity to help save the world. Just then, Olivia bursts in with wild news about the Demon Lord returning and White Mask being involved, but quickly admits it's all in her head and her only real skill is making fake news. Seeing everyone together makes Curran emotional, and she finally admits she's been thinking about her lost Dragon King's stone all on her own, even while having fun with everyone. Tiana tells her she can go after it, but this time with the whole group, and says their rule doesn't count if she turns her personal quest into a job for the party. Nick jumps in and says the survivors fear no job. That cheers Curran up, and as they all raise their hands like they're posing for an awkward group photo, the fireworks light up the sky. They watch the dazzling display together as a team with renewed trust in each other. That's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.